Morning. Welcome to another episode of Thumbs Up Charter Services Behind the Scenes. I'm Captain Karl Burnside from Thumbs Up Charter Services. Haven't seen you guys in a couple of weeks. Been taking a little time off, getting some other things done, but as you can see behind me, we've got our boat pretty much prepped, ready for paint. And that's what we're going to do today, is paint the boat over the next several days. So we're going to show you some of the products we're going to be using. We touched on them a little bit in the video before, but we'll start down here. We selected Rustoelum Marine Products to paint our boat because we have our other boat painted in it. And for a commercial boat, stuff holds up, we found, really well. It's an oil-based paint, all right, so it tends to dry fairly slowly. And the process is going to be probably a 3-day event here. We've got to prime it first, we got to let that dry 24 hours, put on our first color coat, let that dry 24 hours, and then a final color coat, and let that dry 24 hours. But actually, in reality, being oil-based paint, we'll let it dry for like a week before we touch the boat any further after that. But we're going to start with primer, which is a metal-based primer, suitable for aluminum, Rustoelum makes. And it's important to note that Rustoelum products here that we're using for above the water line, we'll get in what we're putting in below the water line in a minute. But we're going to start with a primer coat, a single primer coat. It's white. I think they also make like a rust color primer as well, or a dark brown. But we're painting in a light color, so we're going to use white primer. That is thinned with mineral spirits or paint thinner. Then the ensuing coats will be color, which is what they call oyster white. They changed the name. It used to be, I think, be canvas. But they want that thinned with xylene. Okay? So that's what we're going to use to thin the color coats on the boat. And then for below the water line, we've selected Total Boat, Alumaboat AF NFLing, which does not have any copper ablative. And I mentioned in a couple videos ago, it's very important the products that you use on an aluminum boat be ones that won't attack the aluminum. And this one's a very good product. It holds up well. We're going to paint it black, but it doesn't have any copper in it, which is very, very important. All right, otherwise it will attack the aluminum. But before we get to the primer coat here, we still have a couple things to do. We've got to wipe the entire boat down with what I call Prep Sol, or this is called Prep All. But basically it's kind of like lighter fluid. You know, it just removes the grease, fingerprints, stuff like that, so we don't get any fish eyes or any contamination in the paint. And then we've already done it to the gunnel and bow and the upper roof, but we're going to take some pads of Scotch-Brite here and actually just lightly finish sand the sides of the boat. That's the last thing we got to do, and then Prep Sol it and remove that sanding material before we move on. Then the very final step before we start painting anything is we take tack cloths, and we will wipe the entire boat down in tack cloths to get any of the minute debris or dust or anything else off of there, so we don't get any nibs in our paint. So with that said, we're going to get busy here and we'll show you the process as we go. So our final steps before we get to painting, the last thing, like I was saying, we're doing is we're taking some Scotch-Brite material and pads, and we're simply going to sand this boat. And this is going to make sure that we get anything that we didn't get with the DA when we did it, a slightly rough surface, all right, for adhesion to the paint. And we're just going to simply, with moderate pressure, go down either side of these gunnels and finish this up with the Scotch-Brite pad. Then we'll come along with that prep cleaner, and we will wipe the boat down. And it's very important when you use these products, I should mention too, you know, the prep cleaner is, I want to say there's naphtha in there and other flammable things, so don't be smoking or have open sparks or flames. You know, we don't want to see you get hurt. So that stuff shouldn't be anywhere near where you're working. But when you do that, you can see one of the rags I used for the top gunnel here, after we finish that. You're going to get a lot of this type of material off of it. And that's oxidation that you knock free from the surface that you really can't see until you wipe it down. So we want to make sure we wipe the entire boat down with clean, lint-free, hopefully fairly lint-free rags, right? And then the last step after that is to come along with those tack cloths that are sticky and basically magnetic off onto the rags any final material from the cloth or from sanding, so we don't see any debris in our paint. So we're back with you again, and I've enlisted some help. This is PJ, a good friend of ours, and we've completed our Scotch-Brite sanding of the boat, and now she is using, why is this so blurry? There we go. I guess this has got to get in focus. She is using the prep sol here to carefully wipe the boat down with a pair of gloves, and that's an important thing too. I mean, not only for the prep sol, you should be wearing gloves. You see me on here a lot of times. I don't, but it is a chemical. But the more important thing here is she won't leave any fingerprints when she touches something which would have oil on it, which could fish oil our paint. So she's very carefully taking this in quarter sections and rubbing off any of the sanding grit and material. Then she's flipping the rag to a clean source there, redampening the rag with a prep sol, and then going back and continuing. And we'll do this across the entire transom and all the way down the east side gunnel of the boat, because we've already done the top surfaces here. They're ready to go. Okay, so as you can see, we've been painting a little bit here. We got the top done, we got the top of the gunnels done, the bow of the boat done. This is primer. Rustoelum recommends only one coat of primer, average coat. It doesn't matter when it dries if you can start to see a little bit through it. They just want one average coat on it. Don't put it on too heavy. We're thinning with paint thinner for the primer. So they're telling us 5% maximum of thinner if you need it. We had to have 5% thinner put into it. It was a little bit too thick for a HVLP gun. But it's going on quite nicely, as you can see down here. And we're just going to continue to paint now. Well, as you can see, got the entire boat primed. There's a single coat of the Rustoelum metal primer, marine metal primer. And one quick note to you, you can paint this, as I mentioned earlier, You can use like a siphon cup or what's called HVLP gun, high volume, low pressure, and that's what I've been using. It's got gravity feed to it. And when working with this Rustoelum, I found you got to use a orifice in your gun. If you're going to buy one of these, you can just use a standard one. They don't cost that much to do jobs like this, but you know, I certainly wouldn't use a high quality DeVilbiss gun, automotive finish gun, because the orifice needs to be a 1.4, a little bit greater, excuse me, to pass that Rustoelum through, because it is a thicker material. But like we said earlier, we got to let her dry until tomorrow afternoon, which will be Sunday. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day. I guess my boat won't be painted in a day. Be painted in 3. But you know, it's looking good. No runs, no drips, no sags. We're going to do a second episode. We're going to close this one up, just showing you putting the color on and how we're mixing that paint with a xylene, and maybe some short video of us putting the color on. And then we'll show you the entire finished product at the end after 2 coats are applied. So that'll be sometime late next week. But hoping our compressor lasts. I've had this compressor for 20 years. It's a Craftsman. It's been very good, but it's making some dead moose noises, and I'm kind of concerned. Got to be really careful with it for the rest of the job here if we're going to make it last before we have to go get another one. But one other thing too, something I didn't mention. Anytime you're painting anything with a spray gun or otherwise, you know, make sure you use a respirator. And you know, we've covered everything up in here, but we've got a good film of fallout on just about everything in this shop. And you know, your respirator doesn't have to be fancy. It's a standard 3M respirator. You know, it's got the pre-filter and then the charcoal filter. Anytime you taste product while you're painting, it's time to change these cartridges. Okay, but please don't paint without a respirator. You know, this isn't a catalyzed paint, but I have painted several automobiles, and you know, I always hear the horror stories of somebody having to go to the hospital because the catalyzed paint, you know, set up and gave them breathing problems or something like that. We don't want to see anybody have that kind of an issue. Well, we appreciate you today dropping by, looking at the video, progress on the boat. I'm excited. We've got about 60 hours into this so far, just in the paint. 95% of this is preparation, like we said in the beginning, and 5% of it is actually spraying the product on the boat. We were able to get, with a couple breaks, this entire boat primed in about 2 hours, taking our time. And will probably take us about 2.5 to do the first coat of color, and then of course the second. But you know, I can't stress enough that preparation is everything, and making sure you don't have you know, debris that you're going to paint over, you know, dust nibs or pieces of cloth, whatever. You know, take your time, get it prepped correctly, and the reward is what it's going to look like in the end. So until next time, it's Captain Karl Burnside from Thumbs Up Charter Services at thumbsupcharter.com. Visit us there, or on Facebook at Thumbs Up Charter Services, or even Google at Thumbs Up Charter Services in Sebring or Harbor Beach, Michigan. Now, we are closed for the year, and we're doing a lot of maintenance and getting things ready for next year, but you're always free to give us a call at 810-513-6073 if you want to make a reservation for next season. We open on May 1st. And as always, peace be with you. We're glad you joined. And remember, at Thumbs Up Charter Services, we are wild for walleye. Take care and have a great day.